every year in the offseason, we celebrate free agent acquisitions of some sort or other, right? That's what we do. Some form or other, what we do is we find, oh, man, I love that. I love that. I love that. And what we think of, and I do wish that the rest of life was the way we look at free agent signings. We always think of the best possible scenario, right? Now, whether it's a trade or a free agency sign, whatever. I mean, the truth is that Davante Adams and Russell Wilson are no real different than Matt Ryan, not just because they're traded, but those are basically free agent acquisitions. It's basically the same thing. You know? I mean, Davante Adams he was a free agent, but they could have franchise tagged him. They offered him a deal. It supposedly took less money to go to the Raiders. And that's how that went down. The same thing, Russell Wilson was traded. Okay, he was traded, but he got a new contract. A new contract was part of the prerequisite if you want to trade for Russell Wilson. So when he gets the new contract, it's essentially a free agent. Matt Ryan traded. Okay, so it's the same kind of hit rate. And what happens is when these guys are traded generally, not everybody, but generally, we look at it as what's the best possible scenario. Right? I mean, even when, and I know this is basketball, even when Russell Westbrook was traded to the Lakers, you're like, man, they got a big three. They're back. We don't necessarily talk about, well, what happens if it goes bad? Davante Adams goes to the Raiders, and it's been okay. But when he was traded to the Raiders, or when he signs with the Raiders and gets all that money, all anybody can say is, man, last year they made the playoffs, didn't have Davante Adams. Now they do have Davante Adams. That's going to work. He's got a great relationship with his quarterback. He's going to be happy. They need a star wide receiver. Blah, 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 blah. Best possible scenario. Matt Ryan got benched today. And why was he? He wanted out of Atlanta because they were kicking the tires in Deshaun Watson. And they clearly knew his best days were behind him. So they trade him to the Indianapolis Colts, who they've been through the whole gamut of quarterbacks trying to replace Andrew Luck. And even though most of us are like, isn't he washed? We still gave him the benefit of the doubt of, well, Frank Reich's a former quarterback, kind of a quarterback guru. He's got good enough players. All you got to be is decent, and there you go. Well, apparently, Matt Ryan to this point hasn't been decent. He's a statue back there. He was never a lith in terms of his movement. But, man, Matt Ryan being benched on October 24th is a little bit sooner than any of us thought would happen. So Sam Ehlinger is going to start, of course, the Texas legend. And I also think that gets us to this idea where, I almost think if you describe the NFL season to date, you'd say dark is light, day is night. That's the. Would you ever in your wildest dreams think Sam Ehlinger would be asked to replace Matt Ryan early on in the season? No. The Giants would be 5-1. Would you believe that? No. Look at the Jets wins. Would you believe that? No. Would you believe that Tom Brady is below 500, 7 games in the season for the first time since 2002? That's 20 seasons. No, you wouldn't. Aaron Rodgers has never been in this situation. Dark is light, day is night. I'm struggling to find out the Giants are good, but they keep winning games, so maybe it doesn't matter. Byer, how was yesterday? Wild Sunday, but it did feel like most of the wild stuff was early. What was your show like?
Well, we had the late window where the Chiefs just put it into overdrive in the second half and completely just left the Niners in the dust. It was actually pretty impressive to see because of all the hype that the Niners were getting with the acquisition of Christian McCaffrey. And it actually started out like, oh, wow, this is something. And then Kansas City just stopped playing and was like, all right, enough of this junk, and turned it on. So that was pretty impressive. Seahawks were impressive. and the Broncos were what the Broncos were. That was kind of what our late window was with Russell Wilson and without him. They couldn't get anything going, and the Jets win. But it was an interesting day because you had thought that the Buccaneers would have bounced back. You thought that maybe the Colts had something going from what they did a week ago, and it was anything but. Matt Ryan throws a pick 6 against the Titans. Guess what? They lost by 9. It's a pretty big deal when the team gets 7 and you don't even get 3 in that scenario. You could sit there and point to that play and be like, all right, well, that kind of cost us the game. And it did. And he has not been good.
Okay, so as a Seahawk fan, if I were to tell you at this point in the season this is how they would have been playing, what would your reaction be?
Shocked. Absolutely shocked. And there's this weird feeling about it because it's, not smoke and mirrors. It's pretty legit with what they're doing. And now it's back-to-back games where their defense is stood up. And also, Doug, the thought was we've got 2, meaning the Seahawks, they've got 2 first-round picks, and they've got 2 second-round picks. So now you're going to be able to get some young talent, and one of those should be a high pick. You just thought that Denver's was going to be the later one, and the Seahawks pick was going to be the one that was earlier. Now I think the Broncos pick could be like top 5.
Totally.
Right now.
I was thinking about that myself. Like, remember, everybody said, well, you can't trade with Denver for picks because once they get Russell Wilson, they're going to be a good playoff team, and the picks won't be valuable.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and that was not the case. And so it's really almost a best of both worlds because the Seahawks continue to win or can continue to win and not that hurt themselves if the Broncos continue to lose when it comes to the draft.
It's a great point. I mean, it's a stunning thing. It's not stunning that the Chargers are where they are because of the Chargers. It is stunning where Seattle is, and that Seattle suddenly become this offensive juggernaut, right? That's the other thing was, like, you would say it was a fair critique of what's it called? Russell, of Pete Carroll, that they were so conservative previously. All right, that's fair. They've been conservative previously, and now they're not being conservative. Now they're letting Geno cook, if you will. And they have the best offense in the league. If you would have told anybody they had the best offense in the league at that point in time, at this point in the season, you would have been laughed out of your. It would have been like, Beyer, you're a homer. Beyer, you don't know. If I would have said, like, Gottlieb, you're an idiot basketball guy, like, no, I kind of like Geno Smith here. Nope, you're an idiot.
I know this may go in the weeds a little bit as well, but when you talk about this pick, if the Broncos continue to lose and it ends up being a top 5 pick, the really bad teams in the NFL right now will also be needing quarterbacks, and we expect it to be a very quarterback-rich draft with C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young expected to declare. Will Levis could be a top 10 pick. So, Doug, not only that, now Geno Smith has answered the quarterbacking. Maybe not long term. Maybe they still go quarterback, but it wouldn't be a necessity. Where maybe there's Will Anderson. All of a sudden you're sitting there because the Broncos were so bad, and the first couple of teams take quarterbacks. You end up getting the top defensive player, maybe the top prospect in the draft. Like those,
totally agree. That's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Everybody goes quarterback, and then you end up getting another player who is probably a better prospect, just not a quarterback, and people are reaching for needs.
It's a really weird place for Seahawks fans for considering. I thought the Broncos win was going to be the highlight of the season. Quite frankly, I thought, all right, it's all downhill.
I think most
here.
people did. You're like, yeah, all right, you beat Russell Wilson,
Yep.
You shut him up. Broncos country, let's ride, and then you have a little fun, and the rest of the year we'll tank and we'll get a good draft pick and we'll start over.
Yeah, they were dominated by the 49ers the next week, so you're like, okay.
Yep.
Played a tight game against the Falcons, which they lost at home. And you're like, all right, well, Atlanta's really not that good. And they're probably not great, but they ran off the field by the Bengals yesterday, but Atlanta could be okay. And then all of a sudden you kind of see things turn around a little bit, and yeah, here you are, 4-3.
Yeah, crazy stuff. Okay, what about Jay Stu, the Chargers? Like, we are kind of resigned to it. Like, oh, let me guess, important players hurt? Sure, that's the Chargers. Let me guess, you look very average and threaten to lose to teams that you're supposed to be better than? That's the Chargers. And now, you trail the whole game to the Seahawks, and you're just a mess. And now you have what feels definitely one season ender in J.C. Jackson. Not sure that hurts you, but the Mike Williams injury will hurt you. As a Charger fan, what'd you see?
Yeah, I think I've just resigned to what this team is now. It kind of sucks 7 weeks in because we had high hopes coming in. You and I both said at the beginning of the year that the only thing that can get in this team's way is for them to go Charger. And that typically means that just crazy injuries start to happen. But I'm not really sold on this coaching staff. You know, the whole shininess of the Brandon Staley hire last year and how well regarded that was, that's worn off a lot. Joe Lombardi hasn't come up with too much creative call playing with his best receiver being out all season. I'm going to ask you this again. How can a 6'6" quarterback get balls batted down at least once a drive? I thought like Doug Flutie and Russell Wilson, I thought they dealt with those issues, but your 6'6" quarterback should not be getting balls batted down like he did yesterday against the Seahawks or last week. I know that speaks to the pressure that Herbert's under right now, but it's just it's frustrating, but at the same time, I'm kind of resigned to it.
Yeah. I don't know how he gets it batted down. It is a super, isn't he super tall? How does that work? But it does happen, so he obviously has a lower release than he probably should. It's so hard to watch. It's actually not fun to watch. Like, I was better off yesterday. I was just a better human being when I wasn't watching. Like, I'm just going to take the first quarter off. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the first quarter off. And then I looked up at the score. I'm like, damn it. I'm recording it. I'm going to go back and watch it. And then, honestly, I just couldn't watch it live. Couldn't do it. Couldn't watch it live. Ramos, your turn. You want to bitch about your team at all?
Well, the Rams were off yesterday.
Yeah,
they had a bye. So there's nothing really to be about. It's about them. So let's see how they got the 49ers, the new look 49ers coming up this Sunday. So we'll see what happens.
Meanwhile, you got the Giants who are just reveling in Brian Daboll and the rebirth of Daniel Jones. Here's Daboll on Daniel Jones.
There's usually going to be stacked boxes, and it might be one or two, and as long as we keep doing it, but with the added element of, I'd say, Daniel today, which what do you have, over 100 yards, I think, and then threw for 200 or whatever. Yeah, I mean, played good again, played, really the way we need him to play.
I mean, the Giants, I don't know how legit they are. I mean, they and the Eagles, who you cross, who you play against is important, but what a story the Giants are. I mean, because they kind of became laughingstock organization, and you hire Brian Daboll and you convince yourself, kind of like free agent signings, right? You convince yourself of all the good things. Well, look what he did in Buffalo, and look who he is. Look at the guys he's worked with, and you're like, all right, but it's Daniel Jones. It's not his guy. Star running backs coming off a bad knee injury. They're not built for his style, and here they are. The one loss on the season. Kind of crazy stuff. We got some Aaron Rodgers sound for you. We'll play for you. We got some other things. Like, this is just the NFL, the old stat that everybody knows who covers it. Half the teams that make the playoffs one year don't make it the next year. It just would feel really weird that the half the teams that don't make the playoffs this year are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Green Bay Packers.